What's going on, everybody? And thank you so much for tuning back into the channel. So today I'm excited to have author Cameron Johnston join me. Cameron, how are you doing today?
Hello. Yeah, I'm doing fine, thanks. It's good to be
Good.
here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. I know we've been meaning to do this for quite a while, so why
Yeah,
not
it's
do
one
it
of
before
these
you launch
one
a
of
new
these
book?
things we've been stalking each other on Twitter a bit, saying, "Hello, I'll come on sometime." Well,
Yeah,
today's
it's
that
kind of
day.
kind of like shouting over the valley. Hey, how's it going? 2 weeks later, hey, how's it going?
It's
But
like
yeah,
one of these things you go to conventions and you don't really know people, and then you stand talking to them for like an hour or something, and then you realize you know each other very well off Twitter. You see a Twitter name somewhere, and you're like, "Oh, it's you."
yeah. Oh, you're that guy. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you kind of have a book coming out soon. So
Yeah,
you
I
getting
do.
excited? Are you anxious? How are you feeling about that?
Well, it's out in 6 days, so I'm kind of approaching the panic stage, where I've had a few reviews back, so few. It's that you never quite know how people are going to receive your book. I was pretty sure people were going to love it because I had so much fun writing it that I thought readers would also have a lot of fun reading it. At least
Right.
that's what I hoped. Yeah, so 6 days, and now I'm like, oh my god, it's going to be released to the public like a wild beast.
Right. It's not just in bloggers' hands anymore. It's
Yeah.
it's in the wild. Yeah, I know Arun from my blog. I mean, like read it, I think as soon as he got an ebook. So
Mhm.
he loved it. So I was like, well, I
Excellent.
mean, if he loved it, he's a little bit harsher of a critic than most people on my blog or most people that I
Well,
know.
he's got
So I'm like,
excellent taste. What can I say?
there you go. For sure. So I just kind of, like I always do, I'm gonna start out, asking you, tell me about yourself. Tell me, did you read a lot growing up? Was reading
Mhm.
not a thing that you did until you got into your teens? How did you get into writing, and maybe who were some of your influences?
Yeah, absolutely. Fire away. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, just go ahead and start, just
Yeah,
growing up, and then how you
yeah,
got into
sure. Well,
writing.
I'm currently a level 41 human from Scotland. Yeah, I was. Yeah, did I read or did I not? I was a library kid. I was one of those kids that they went in and came out with like an armload of 10 books at a time, and then went back in next week. I think my mum was sick of taking me up to the library. But yeah, so I suppose partly I write fantasy because my mum and dad used to take me all over Scotland, visiting castles, ancient sites, all that sort of thing. When you pair that with reading, like Dragonlance, because that was massive when I was growing up, and watching all the old swashbuckling films, like
Mm.
Errol Flynn and the black and whites, and they're all jumping about in tights, sword fighting. Oh, knights, swords, and then you've got dragons. Excellent. Yep, I'm in. All in. And that's why.
I gotcha. So who would you say are like the authors that you read? Like these were these staples, I guess, growing up
Oh
that
well.
that you've stayed with.
Yeah. Robert E. Howard, Conan. That was a big influence. Started off with the comics, Savage Sword of Conan. Absolutely loved them. Dragonlance I've mentioned. There's also Fighting Fantasy and Lone Wolf books, where you choose your own adventure.
Mm,
Absolutely love those. Forgotten Realms books, Salvatore, yeah,
yeah,
all the classics.
I gotcha.
Wizard of Earthsea, all that sort of
Mm,
stuff. Michael Moorcock was a big influence. The Elric stories in Corum,
mm.
absolutely brilliant. And then I can't remember what age I was, probably about 14 when I discovered H.P. Lovecraft.
Okay.
First time I had a big fat omnibus book. First time I read it, it was there was a storm that was lashing Scotland. So the rain was rattling the windows, and I'm sitting with my torch under the covers reading this book, and the feeling of that just stayed with me. Kind of cosmic horror,
Mhm.
like when you visit like an ancient stone circle or something. Every time I'm kind of wandering about the grounds looking at it, there's always a part of me going, I wonder why this was built. What's it containing? You know, is this a seal on some eldritch horror underneath the earth somewhere?
Right, right. Yeah, there's something about, the way weather is going, depending on the book that you read, is it kind of gets you in the mood. It was funny. I was talking to Ian Green about a week ago, which fellow Scotland. He was reading an excerpt from his upcoming book, The Fist and the Gauntlet, or the Gauntlet and the Fist Beneath. And it just so happened to be like storming in the background, like thundering behind me. And he was reading about a storm, and I'm like, I could get into this.
It really does add something, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's why you always want to read ghost stories in the winter. No one wants to be sitting in the sunshine reading a ghost story.
I know.
Somehow it doesn't quite work.
No, it doesn't.
It's like people, paranormal exploring haunted houses. They don't want to do it during the daytime.
No, it's boring. Yeah, I've always wondered like why beach reads always tend to be like thrillers. A lot of people do read like fantasy and science fiction, I guess, as beach reads too, depending on your genre of choice. But I feel like thrillers are always like the ones that like you see as like the summer reads list, and I feel like thrillers are always
page turners.
Yeah. So I guess that's because like eventually you're gonna get tired of the heat and want to go in, so you want something quick.
Yeah. I think my ideal fantasy read is I don't actually have an open fire, but I'd love an open fire. Like if I'm on holiday or something, have an open fire. Like a cold ale or a whiskey, sit in front of the fire, reading your fantasy book. Yeah.
Oh gosh, that sounds wonderful. Is it winter yet? Can it stop being?
It's too warm.
So tell me a little bit about writing. So did you write a lot growing up, or did you kind of find writing a little bit later in your years?
I think I started off just making up my own stories in my head, like playing with my Transformers and things like that, making up these epic stories, and then eventually started writing little bits and pieces down. And then you have to write stories in school, write a story about a radio station. Oh wait, there's a giant monster. There's always ways to subvert those kind of stories, and teachers just like, but yeah. So
this kid,
started off doing little bits and pieces. You don't really know what you're doing. It was kind of my mid-20s. I had my first go at a novel. One that got past 20,000 words. So I wrote 2 novels, which will never see the light of day for obvious reasons. They're just horrible. And then 11 years ago now, I was like, right, I need to take this seriously. I actually want to get a book finished and published. So I joined a local writer circle, did a whole bunch of short stories, honed my skills, learned self-editing. And then when I decided the time was right, and I kind of knew what I was doing, I was like, right, it's time to write that. It's been bursting it out for the last year and a half. And then I just wrote that up, sent it off to agents, and then got picked up. Angry Robot snapped it up, and that became The Traitor God.
Okay. Yeah, it's always interesting hearing, the journey that writers take. A lot of writers that I talk to you, they don't always join, or they don't talk about joining writers groups or going to conventions like craft conventions and stuff like that. So do you feel like that really, really helped you in your journey of like kind of honing your prose?
Oh, immeasurably. Because the writers group I'm in does have professional writers in as well. People in Hal Duncan, Gary Gibson, William King was in it. People like that, as well as a lot of people you've never heard of who write absolutely amazing fiction. So yeah, it's I learned as much critiquing their work as I did from having my own work critiqued, because it's easier to critique someone else's.
Right.
You've got so many blind spots on your own, and people go, oh yeah, there's this bit and this bit, and you could fix them doing that, and they're sitting going, of course, why didn't I think of that? And if you go along long enough, story you're about to submit, and you go, well, Neil's going to say this about that, so I'd better fix that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're channeling your colleagues to look at your own fiction through their eyes, to see what's wrong with it. But one of the main things I took out of it was just the writing community. I didn't know anyone writing online. So yeah, so you meet up, you do the critique session, then you go to the pub afterwards, and the person that gets their story ripped apart gets a pint bought for them. So, or a cup of tea,
There you go.
which is a good way to do it, I think.
Yeah, but it's I guess it's motivation at that point. It's like, okay, we ripped it to shreds, but you're also gonna get a drink on us.
Yeah, and you're all in it together. You're all supporting each other, and it just keeps you writing. You don't kind of start despairing that you're never going to get better, because there's always ways to get better. We're submitting more stories, critiquing more work, and it all kind of adds up. Plus, when you got your first convention, which was World Fantasy Con Brighton in 2013 in my case, there was about 12 of us from Glasgow and Scotland, all went down to the south of England. So, didn't know anyone else there, but I knew my local peeps.
Right. Just kind of looking around, like looking for a familiar face.
So it's quite nerve-wracking when there's several thousand people in this massive hotel, like, and then you've got people like Joe Abercrombie, Terry Pratchett, Robin Hobb, and I'm just like, oh, I'm just this little wannabe author,
I'm just a fan. I'm just a fan at this point. I'm just gonna come gawk at people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, went to the little cafe clatches with like Joe Abercrombie and Robin Hobb and stuff. And it's like, I'm sitting in a room with them. Wow.
Yeah. This is really happening.
Yeah. And then it was just the other year that I was sitting on a panel next to Joe Abercrombie. So, and I was just like, wow, okay, that's progress.
Yeah, but I feel good. I've made it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Well, I've made it to some extent,
Hey, I mean, sitting next to Abercrombie,
I'm on here.
I feel like you've made it. especially in the fantasy community. So
yeah, it's still really weird to me, It's I've got a book out. I've got 3 books out. How did this happen? When did this happen?
Right. So talk to me about your writing process. So how has it changed since your early iterations to when you first started really sitting down to do the Trigger God? Did you plot everything out? Did you pants write it? And have you changed since that book to writing the Maleficent Seven?
See, I love questions like this, because inevitably 3/4 of the authors will turn and go, "We're supposed to have a process? Well, I just make it up." But I think part of writing a book is learning how you write a book, because you can listen to everyone else talking about, oh, you need to plot this out, or I don't plot anything, I just pants it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many pitfalls in that. I found if I plotted out an entire novel, I've got no interest in writing it. Absolutely none. Just kills all the joy. But on the other hand, if I just completely pants it and make it up as I go, that was the problems I had when I was first starting to write novels. After about 20,000 words, it just peters out and I don't know where to go. So I'm kind of in between a little bit. I call it kind of scaffolding. So I've got a start, I've got an end that I want to hit, and I've got a couple of major points along the way that I want to hit. And I find it gives me enough structure to keep me on track, but it gives me enough leeway to go off road a bit and explore and have fun. So that really worked for me. I kind of learned that as I was writing Traitor God, and all came together just perfectly in the Maleficent Seven.
I gotcha. Yeah, I like that term, scaffolding. I think in the US we're going to call it drywalling. I'm going to go ahead and coin it.
It's just something that worked for me. It's enough of one and enough of the other. Just nice middle of the road way to go.
Yeah. And I know a lot of authors that will start one way and then change, and then they'll go back to the original depending on the book. It's just like, really, it's a feeling. Like, does this feel right? Am I getting where I want to be? So many days.
I don't want to finish a book and then go, you know what, that last 50,000 words, I need to scrap that and redo it. And I'm like, no.
Stab.
I don't have enough time to do that. Yeah. So a little bit of structure keeps me on track. I might have to change bits and pieces, chop and change some chapters and things, but I don't have to cut in a book or something.
Yeah. So are you one that would you enjoy having to add words rather than take away, or would you rather take away
Oh,
words?
I frequently do. My first draft, which is it's probably more like draft 3.5 by the time I've finished that. Um, I then go back and start fleshing scenes out, adding in details, like clothing, food, smells, some description of scenes and people. So I find it usually adds X number of thousand words when
Mhm.
I go back through it anyway.
I gotcha. Yeah, I'm always curious because I've spoken to a couple of us that are like, yeah, like I sent it in, I thought it was perfect, and then I had to add like 30,000 words, and I go, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, like you had to add a couple of novellas, and like no thanks.
And then, of course, you've got the people that submit massive 250,000 word tomes to people, and then like, oh, you need to cut 100,000 of that, and they're
Yeah.
like, hmm.
Okay, what words did I use way too much? Let's just cut all those out.
Yeah, cut it.
Yeah, exactly. So, as far as your fiction that you've written, why did you, I guess, choose to go like the kind of the dark fantasy route? Is that just what you just enjoyed reading, so that's what you wanted to write about, or is it did you want to start with like more of like a high fantasy and it just kind of
Mm.
went down a dark road?
Well, I think, in all honesty, it's a reaction to the big fat epic fantasies I used to read in the 90s, early 2000s.
Mhm.
Farm boy heroes that are just too good to be believable, and then you've got the Dark Lords who are just evil.
Gosh, with the mustaches.
Yes, yes. So yeah, it just I found the farm boys not as interesting as the villains.
Mm.
And then, of course, came that whole kind of wave of morally grey characters coming in. And then I went back and reread Conan, reread Elric and whatnot. And they were that kind of, are they good or are they self-serving? The kind of seesaws are on that line. And I
Mm.
thought that's the kind of thing I want to write. I don't want to write about goody two shoes.
Yeah.
I want to write about people that have problems and failings and sometimes do the wrong thing. And yeah, so and then of course I went a bit darker than that and I started writing about actual villains.
Yeah, I'm sitting here, I'm re-listening.
People like Loki from the MCU.
Yeah, and he's not
Villains are
good.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, well, see, I'm going through like we're doing a read through of the Wheel of Time for the show that's coming out,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm also going back and listening to the First Law, and so it's such a massive dynamic, like difference in
Mm-hmm.
dynamic, because you're doing the farm boy with Wheel of Time,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
with Abercrombie, is Logan Nine Fingers like actually good at all? Period. Is there anybody in that story that's actually
Mm-hmm.
redeemable? I mean, but what's so funny is Glock is my favorite character. Like
Oh,
I
absolutely.
love
Yeah.
every
I,
single
I
chapter that
think
he's
he's most
in.
people's favorite character.
Yeah, and I'm like, he's horrible.
Yeah. But you know what? I've always said you don't have to have likable characters or even relatable, just make them interesting.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'll happily read an interesting character if they're horrible.
absolutely. Oh yeah, Jorg from Broken Empire.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
absolutely.
my gosh, I'd read it all day, every day. But yeah, and I feel like and this is probably not true of an actual true statement, but I feel like there's a lot of characters now that you can really pick out as stories that you can really connect with. I think authors are really honing in on like really how to get you enthralled with their
Yeah.
protagonists like
Mm-hmm.
pretty early on. Like just a couple of examples. I mean, I just finished The Hand of the Sun King by JT Greathouse.
Oh, okay.
Another
Yeah.
one, Dragon Mage by ML Spencer.
Mm-hmm.
The Pariah by Anthony Wright. I mean, like it's like from the first couple of pages, they're like, okay, I think I'm gonna like this character, and you just go along with them on their journey the entire
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
I don't know if that's like just a thing that's happened, recently. I say recently, like in the last decade, or has that been a thing for years?
yeah, but it does seem to be increasingly so. I think a lot of books used to be heavily plot driven, whereas now I think there's a lot of them. I think Robin Hobb taught me that when I was reading the Farseer series.
Mm.
Because I've always said she's the master of the emotional gut punch. Because you're like, oh, Fitz, finally something good's happened to Fitz, and then she makes you care about him, and then just punishes you for it.
Yeah,
in all the best ways.
Right. Yeah, that's what I've heard. Anybody that talks about her series is like, they always have the crying emoji, when they're talking about it, because it's just like, oh my gosh, she just makes you feel so much.
Well, that's just it. She makes you feel. There's lots of books I've enjoyed, but I don't actually feel terribly much about the characters. It's just it's an entertaining read. It's a good plot. It's an interesting world. But I think the best ones make you care about the characters.
Yeah. Because I feel like a lot of like action-packed books don't have that feeling, because you're kind of jumping between a lot of characters at that point. It's just all about action, and so there's no backstory. Yeah. There's no reason to like really want to get behind this person. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's kind of my go-to is character-driven novels. I mean, I love action, I love intrigue and world building and all that, but if there's a character that doesn't grab me, pretty early on, I'm probably going to go to the next thing. Unless it's like a thriller or something. I usually just like to find the hook and see if I can guess it by the end. So, but yeah, I have all different kinds of genres that are palate cleansers from fantasy. If I ever just feel like I'm not getting into it.
It's how I've started thinking about approaching books. Come up with a character, and then come up with the plot, and then the world after that. And so a lot of people start world building and then try and fit the characters in. I kind of do it in reverse. I think of an interesting character and then kind of build things around them because I like that character and I want to write about that character in that situation.
Or 7 characters.
Yeah, that was a bit of a jump. So the Traitor God and God of Broken Things, they're single point of view. So I did find it a little bit frustrating in places because everything, because the main character is not there. So I have to kind of give you that information some other way. So with the Maleficent Seven, I have, of course, come up with 7 main points of views and multiple minor points of view. So I've gone completely the other way. You can see everything.
You've gone mad.
No, I didn't just go, you know what? I'll have 2 or 3 characters. No, 7. And let's make them all horrible villains as well. Yeah. So, take the easy route, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of which, can you tell us a little bit about the Age of Tyranny, your first duology with Angry Robot? Tell us a little bit about what it's about and this main character that you've written behind.
Yeah, so he's a mage, and unlike most of the other mages, his special ability is getting into people's heads. So he likes to call himself a people-mancer, to be polite, but really he's just going into your head. He's mucking about with your memories, telling you to do things or forget things. And he's kind of reviled because of that. He faked his death and left the city for... he discovers that his best friend he left behind's been horrifically murdered. So he's returning home to investigate this murder and discovers this horrible threat to the entire city. So it's a bit of a genre mashup between like film noir kind of investigation and epic fantasy.
Okay.
So big monsters, big magic. That's how I describe it.
I like that. And then how about your upcoming release, the Maleficent 7? So you're going from 1 to 7 on top of minor characters.
Absolutely. And whereas Edwin Walker and the Traitor God, he was that kind of anti-hero kind of character. These are just outright villains. Just absolutely horrible people. So you've got dread demonologist Black Heron. She's the general who abandoned her army in evil total conquest. You've got a vampire, Lord Morfell. He's a suave Lord of Fade's Reach who was driven out by the enemy army. You've got a cold-hearted necromancer, Maven, who's scarred and scornful. You've got an orc chieftain, a Moghadak, who's bold and brash and brutal and has a rather large axe. You've got a fallen war god, Tiernach, who's shrewd and callous, and he's the god of a slain people. Then you've got a twisted alchemist, Jarek Hayden, who views humans as, well, just sloppy machines, really. And then you've got a pirate queen, Verena Weldon, who's the scourge of the seas. So outright villains, each and every one, although some are more human than others. Just absolutely enormous fun. 7 characters all kind of riffing off each other and, backstabbing or trying to stop themselves from backstabbing.
I gotcha. What?
So
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the plot is basically 40 years ago, Black Heron just abandoned her army. But now there's a fanatical new faith that's sweeping the lands, and it's encroaching on the town where she's been living, making a home for the last 40 years. So to stand against this army, she has to reunite with all her old captains and persuade them to fight with her one last time.
I gotcha. So what made you decide to just go for the villain's point of view? Like, what, why no heroes?
I've been wanting to write a story about a Dark Lord for probably 20 years. I've always reading these books and finding like the Dark Lord characters. Oh, it must have a really fascinating backstory that I want to know more about. I just find them more interesting than heroes. Mm-hmm. Just like we were talking about with MCU's Loki earlier. Just fascinating characters. Don't have to be outright monsters to be villains.
Right.
Just twisted morals or slightly tweaked. And obviously the heroes and the victors are the ones that write the histories. Mm-hmm. So I've wanted to write a story about the Dark Lord's point of view for a long time, but for some reason that 7 just popped into my head. And I was like, oh, I could do a take on 7 Samurai or Magnificent Seven, but they're all villains protecting a town. How twisted could that get? Quite twisted.
Right. I gotcha. Yeah, I've always been interested in, and I've talked to a lot of people, and we can't really figure out what it would be, but we always see what happens after the hero defeats the villain. But mm-hmm. What happens after the villain defeats the hero? Like, what's left? Like, you think of the whole Thanos thing. Like, he just wanted to like hang out in a hut. Like, what is the point in destroying everybody when there's nothing left? Like, what are you gonna do? Just like binge watch Netflix? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
what's the answer?
So you've got like all your mini bosses. Mm-hmm. And like books, so like the lieutenant of the evil Dark Lord that is a bit of a cut out character. What's their motivations? Why are they doing what they're doing? All this kind of stuff is the stuff I'm reading going, I want to know.
Yeah.
So I just wrote about all of that.
Yeah.
Take all these fantasy archetypes and just play with them.
Right. Yeah, because it's like so do they turn into a hero at some point because there's somebody worse than them that like comes along? Like, is that a path that they go to? Because I don't know that many paths because it hasn't really been done. So it's interesting that you decided to do 7 of them in one go.
Yeah, and they're supposed to protect the town instead of destroy it, and they're like, what's happening here?
The tables have officially turned. It was funny. I feel like Angry Robot, at least for a couple of novels, has decided to really go like that no hero route because they had The Coward by Stephen Arion that came out.
Yes, excellent book. Yeah.
And so I'm like, so what's next? Is there going to be another anti-hero novel that comes out soon? So it's a really interesting path that I've kind of done this summer.
I feel like I've done the anti-hero thing. It's nice to just go for outright villains. But one of the things I wanted to avoid was I've read a few kind of grimdark books that are just humorless, I guess. Mm-hmm. They're very serious. And I'm like, yeah, that's not what I want to write. So there's actually a lot of humor in the Maleficent Seven. I mean, who says bad guys can't be funny? Especially when they're, riffing off each other and, snapping each other.
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely. So there's a lot of black humor in the book, and there's a lot of characters just playing off each other, which I had so much fun writing.
I gotcha. So did you come up with all 7 characters? You mentioned, wanting to have a character and then build everything around it. Did you come up with all 7 before you really started diving into the world and its machinations?
Not quite. I had ideas of archetypes that could include. So I went off with Black Heron, who's a grandmother demonologist. So she has a small army of demons, but she's also got a family, and that's the character I started off with. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to have a demonologist, I'm going to have a vampire and a necromancer. And then I was like, right, okay. I had a lot of choices as to kind of fantasy races I could include. Do I go like a Dark Knight or something like that? And I was like, yeah, let's put an orc in. So I put an orc war leader in, and she just, once I'd made that decision, she just popped out entirely complete with her voice, and it was just excellent. And she's just looking askance at human society and just bewildered at what we and what they are doing. Just it doesn't really compute to her. And following that, there was Tirnak, who's just like this kind of fallen war god, who's he's essentially kind of like a Scottish border reaver. So his clan used to come down from the hills to the towns and villages, kill people, nick all their stuff, unless they're paid a tithe to go away. And he's lost his people. So he's like a broken man. He's the drunkard. He has to try and pull himself back up for one last fight against the enemy that took everything from him. So yeah, and then the alchemist and the pirate queen followed that.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious because I was like, that's a lot of characters to come up before you really really start diving into the big stuff. So do you have any other books planned inside of this world, or is this kind of just one and done for now, and then maybe come back to it later?
I think for me it was just an individual standalone story, because it's that one protecting the town scene. I don't think it really requires anything else. Mm-hmm. There are little bits and pieces that are left at the end of the book, so people can continue the story on in their heads if they want to imagine that. But there's no cliffhanger. Everything's resolved, done and dusted. I like giving people a complete story in one book.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So tell me, have you read anything recently that you'd recommend?
Oh, well, there's R.J. Barker's new series, The Bone Ships. Absolutely fantastic. Peter McLean, War for the Rose Throne. Superb, absolutely superb. And I've just started reading Anna Stevens' new book, The Stone Knife.
Okay.
And yeah, just absolutely fascinating. So I would recommend those.
Those are some fantastic recommendations. Yeah, I definitely agree on Bone Ships, and actually Priest of Gallows was phenomenal. It's like my favorite of the series so far. And of course, like as soon as I finish it, he's like, "Oh yeah, Priest of Crowns is not." But yeah, I need to read The Stone Knife. I've got it on audio. I just haven't gotten around to it. It's just one of those things where like it wasn't really released in the US, so it was hard to kind of get it going. But luckily they released the audio book here, so I was able to grab it. But yeah, fantastic recommendation. So I can see the cover in the background. Can you show us up close the Maleficent Seven? Go look at that gorgeous cover.
There we go.
Yeah, very nice. So yeah, Maleficent 7 comes out on August 10th. So so close.
I know, it's
Don't be nervous. It's gonna be great.
Well, you can't please everyone, but so far people seem to be getting what I've been doing. Just out and out, over the top entertainment.
Right. There you go. You can't ask for much more. You hope they can catch one character and talk about them a little bit, but as long as they enjoy it and have a good time while
there's a couple of people that have said, oh, this bit's gory, and then they've immediately laughed in the next paragraph. So I'm like, I'm doing something right.
There you go. Discuss people and make them laugh.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, Cameron, thank you so much for coming and chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Best of luck with the publication of Maleficent 7. Best of luck in your future ventures with your novels to come. And we'll definitely have to do this again.
Absolutely.
Take
Thank you.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your week. Talk to you later.
You too. Bye.